happened to me? I am a lover, a friend with dreams, but sometimes I feel broken and I can't stand the night. All these days feel like a heavy weight on me. Ooh, what do I have to lose tonight? Ooh, could I live my dreams tonight? Oh, what if I let go tonight? Oh, I wish I could feel like falling down a stream of water. Cleanse my soul, my heart, and be alright. Laying on a bed of roses. Rest my head, darkness turns to light. Running through a field of grass. Lifts my feet and spirit in time. Oh, I wish that's what I could feel like. I am not what happened to me. I am a rock, I am still here, I will be free. But every person has their story, and all I want is that you're sorry. But if that's not the case, then how do I forgive? Ooh, what do I have to lose tonight? Ooh, could I live my dreams tonight? Oh, what if I let go tonight? Oh, I wish I could feel like falling down a stream of water. Cleanse my soul, my heart, and be alright. Laying on a bed of roses. Rest my head and darkness turns to light. Running through a field of grass. Lifts my feet and spirit in time. Oh, I wish that's what I could feel like. I wish that's what I could feel like. Say I am not what happened to me. 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 Falling down a stream of water. My heart and be alright. Laying on a bed of roses. Rest my head and darkness turns to light. Running through a field of grass. Lifts my feet and spirit in time. Oh, I wish that's what I could feel like. I wish that's what you could feel like.
Okay, good
I
afternoon,
wish that's
everyone.
what
Thank you all
we
so
could
much for
feel
joining us
like.
today. Can you show me some thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Okay, great. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Lydia Vargas, and I am an MSW student intern with Trauma Inform LA. TILA is an all volunteers grassroots organization founded in 2014. TILA's mission is to foster resilient communities that promote healing and well-being through collaboration, education, and community engagement. We started out as 10 social justice activists on a rainy day in LA in November of 2014. And now there are over 3,000 folks who have participated. Please follow our podcast, Our Stories Matter, which is a podcast celebrating the complex lived experiences of activists and healers through storytelling. Our Story Matters centers on healing through activism, film, art, music, breath, and movement. Each guest brings a unique story, but one with the global theme of community healing and liberation through storytelling. As journalist Lauren Gilger profoundly states, the power of this story will save us all. As we get started, we would also like to take a moment to acknowledge the original stewards of the land where our event takes place today. Tila acknowledges the Gabrielino Tonga people as the traditional land caretakers of Tuvangar, which is today Los Angeles Basin and Channel Islands. We are committed to uplifting the names of these lands and community members from these nations who reside alongside us. We also want to acknowledge the suffering and forced unpaid labor of enslaved African Americans and Africans, which enabled the start of this country. If you feel led, please put the name of the ancestors you would like us to acknowledge in the chat today. I would also like to take a moment to create a space of gratitude for our amazing panelists. Thank you for sharing this space with us. Please feel free to unmute yourself or share in the chat any gratitude thoughts that you want to share with them. Additionally, I would like to take a moment to thank the Anti-Recidivism Organization, ARC, the Rainbow Services Organization, Unchained Scholars, the Uncuffed Project, and the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, for sponsoring and supporting this event. And a final thank you for all of those who are joining us via YouTube Live from around the world as we continue to battle these unprecedented times this year. Before we start our program, we want to share a few housekeeping items with you. Since we are live streaming this year, it also means that we are videotaping tonight's presentation. Please feel free to use the chat room to express acknowledgement of what will be said tonight. Happy faces, thumbs up, snaps, etc. Please keep the chat room nonviolent. We will be using the chat box for our Q&A sessions as well. On this similar note, I would let Nicho Sierri from RSVP, one of our sponsors of the event, who will be our safe person this evening and will give a brief introduction on the work that they do. Nicho, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you, Lydia. So I'm Nichelle Sierri, and I am a victims advocate for RSVP, and we provide support for students who have experienced or been impacted by power-based harm or sexual violence. So this could be anything from harassment, intimate partner violence, sexual assault, cyber exploitation, stalking, violence of that nature. At RSVP, we offer crisis services, safety planning, counseling, therapy, education, accompaniment resources. So if you need assistance with filing a police report or going to court, we're here to assist you with that. We also provide academic accommodations and supports, as well as connection to community resources if what you need to be supported is outside of our scope. And so we make sure that you have access to those services. I'm going to put in the chat a link to our website, but we are also here for you 24/7, and you can reach us by calling 213-740-9355 and hitting extension 2. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for that. Now we're going to move on, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to our moderator for the night, Dr. Ramona Merchan. She is a native Angelino with over 2 decades of experience in public service in Los Angeles County. Ramona currently serves as the Executive Director of Trauma Inform LA and is the Project Director with the Los Angeles County Office of Child Protection. Ramona is an experienced trainer, coach, advocate, and leader. She's passionate about assisting vulnerable and marginalized communities. She believes the values of equity, cultural responsiveness, and trauma-informed care belongs at the center of all engagement. Ramona has lectured and trained on various topics in the areas of child welfare, racial equity, and leadership and trauma. Ramona, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Lydia. Welcome everybody who's joining us today at Trauma Informed LA. I'm going to start with a quote. "We can sit in our corners mute forever while we waste away, while our children distorted and destroyed, while our earth is poisoned, and we still will be no less afraid," by Audre Lorde. 70% of incarcerated women are mothers. 1.3 million children have mothers who are incarcerated. For women who are survivors of IPV, they often have been incarcerated for protecting themselves from continued abuse, only to be further oppressed and victimized by systems once incarcerated. Reproductive justice goes beyond preserving abortion rights and access to contraception. It expands to comprehensive sex education, the school to prison pipeline, mass incarceration, police brutality, immigration, voter disenfranchisement, LGBTQ discrimination, racism, sexual and reproductive freedom, sexual assault, and yes, intimate partner violence. All of these issues intersect with the ability to be truly free as a person is in our society. Reproductive justice is a framework and movement that links reproductive health and rights with social justice. The reproductive movement emphasizes that a woman's reproductive health is not only based on individual's choice, but also a variety of factors and conditions within one's experiences, family, and community. While many women see abortion rights as their main issue, and it's important, many women, in particular women of color, low-income women, and incarcerated women, often have difficulty accessing contraception, comprehensive sex education, sexually transmitted infection prevention and care, alternative birth options, adequate prenatal and pregnancy care, domestic violence assistance, adequate wages to support their families, safe homes, and so much more. Even the right to parent is often threatened. Women have been shackled during birth, denied basic health care, and even forced to pay for terminations if that was their choice. Reproductive justice addresses all of these issues. These persistent harms against women need to be addressed, and I'm honored to engage in today's discussion with such esteemed panelists. So first, I want to take a moment to thank the music that you heard earlier was from our esteemed guest, Afia Anem. She's an actress, singer, songwriter, and motivational speaker. She grew up in a cult in the Netherlands. She experienced severe racism throughout her life and was chronically sick for years. Having to heal from these hardships and many more, she started researching trauma healing and actively taking steps to better her life. She escaped the cult and decided that nobody makes decisions for her but herself, and healed from endometriosis without surgeries. She now writes and speaks about how to actually release trauma from your system, stop the suffering, and start living a life free from bliss, or with bliss, because you simply deserve it also. Thank you, Afia, for your beautiful music, and we will get to hear her at the end sing some of her music. So thank you so much. Here we go. All right. So our next panelist, Norma Compian, is the Associate Director of the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. She's the Director of Women and Non-Binary Services. And I'm sure she will tell you that she touches a little bit of everything in her organization. She joined ARC in March of 2016 as a life coach, and after nearly 5 years working in the criminal justice reform and nonprofit sector, She's formerly incarcerated woman, and she knows firsthand the experience of the many challenges of reentry, making her a compassionate and effective guide for young people learning to navigate society after coming home from prison. Norma is a fierce advocate for incarcerated women and girls, and she has traveled into the California State Capitol to educate legislators. She's spoken on panels and presented in numerous classrooms in order to effect change for women, mothers, and girls who were formerly incarcerated, and to create a fair justice systems for all. In 2019, she co-designed and launched ARC's first Women and Non-Binary Services Department to better serve the needs of 1,300 plus formerly incarcerated members, as well as over 50 incarcerated women through inside programming at the California Institution for Women in Corona. In all of her work, Norma seeks to carve out spaces to ensure that everyone's voices are heard and valued. Thank you for joining us today, Norma. Our next panelist, Kiera Dashiell, and forgive me, Kiera, if I said it wrong. She also currently serves as a community health worker for Black women in wellness. She's passionate about social justice, women's rights, and prison reform. Kiera strives to be impactful and to motivate people to be the best version of themselves. Thank you for joining us, Kiera. Our last and not least final panelist is Summer Lacey. She's a criminal justice director of the ACLU of Southern California. Before joining the ACLU of Southern California, Summer worked as senior legal counsel at the Justice Collaborative. Prior to joining TJC, Summer worked as a deputy federal public defender at the Los Angeles office of the Federal Public Defender. Summer represented indigent clients accused of committing diverse federal crimes, and she also mentored new attorneys, trained legal interns, and facilitated at a national training on impactful sentence advocacy. Before joining the Federal Public Defender's Office, she began her legal career at the Brooklyn Defender's Office, where she advocated on behalf of clients facing felony and misdemeanor charges for 3 years. During law school, Summer worked on racial justice-related litigation with the ACLU and advocated for children's rights. Oh gosh, this is such a long organization. Ditsawanelo, and I'm having Summer say it herself way better than me, in Botswana, South Africa. Summer received a BA in communications from UCLA and her JD from New York University School of Law. I want you to join me in thanking all of our panelists for being with us today. So let's get started. Esteemed panelists, let's talk about what does reproductive justice mean to you? And you guys can go in any order.
Hi, I started off. Hi, everyone. My name is Kiera again. I think for me, reproductive justice is having the complete physical, mental, spiritual, political, social, economical well-being of women and girls' bodies. And I think this is based on the full achievement of those rights and the protection of those rights. And included in those rights are the right to have a child, the right to control your birth and options, the right to say yes, the right to say no, and just basically total and complete autonomy over your body as a woman.
Thank you, Kiera. Other thoughts?
That was amazing, Kiera. I was thinking the exact same thing, that what it means to me is having women having autonomy over their bodies, being formerly incarcerated and living within that system for almost 20 years. I know firsthand what it feels like not to have that autonomy, not to be able to make the choices that would be best for you and your family. And so it is something extremely important and really near and dear to my heart. And I'm just thankful we're here in California.
Right. There's so many different states that have such oppressive and backwards legislation and laws. And just recently, I know we saw in Texas that a woman almost died because she was denied, getting a termination of her pregnancy. I mean, it's just insane. So I thank you very much for your comments and your views. Summer, what do you think about this?
Yeah, so just to really kind of jump on what Norma said and to echo what Kiara said, but in addition to reproductive justice, meaning ensuring the right that everyone has to be able to maintain independence over their own bodies, to decide for themselves if they want to have children, not to have children. But I think another thing is something that you brought up, Dr. Mershon, at the beginning. It's really to be able to parent children in safe, supportive, and sustained communities where the focus is on maintaining healthy families. And that's what is prioritized over criminalizing choices related to contraception, related to reproduction, related to parental decisions. And I think that's something that's also so important as well.
I know that I know I mentioned, as I said before in my opening, about the oppressive nature of the practices that go on for women who have been incarcerated. And I think the intersection, particularly of intimate partner violence, where we're talking about sexual violence and the power dynamics that goes on between a survivor and their abuser. Right. I think about those things and how that kind of replicates itself because you're put into a situation, oftentimes from protecting yourself, being thrown into jail, right, or to prison, being incarcerated, and how those dynamics play out where you don't even have a right to do some of those things, that have to do with decisions about your body. So how do you see the intersection of reproductive justice impacting those who are incarcerated?
Well, I think that we saw with COVID that it really affects disproportionately people who are incarcerated. And I think that this could also be the same thing where people who already have their rights limited will even, maybe not in California, but throughout the country, that they will have their rights severely limited by this.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very shocking to me, actually, when I was doing some research on this, that women who are making, on average, less than $1.86 a day for the labor that they're being forced to do while they're incarcerated, are oftentimes having to pay for some of the medical procedures when it comes to reproductive rights. So that was really shocking to me. I was like, what? Like, how can that even be possible? And given that, you're never going to pay it off, right? You're never going to be able to pay off some of those things. So it was just, I don't think that the society knows, right, in general.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I had so many of those moments when I was incarcerated. Like, I just sort of like walked up as this 22-year-old girl and I was like, that can't be true. Like, this is California. Like, this is the United States. Like, that's not true. And then, little by little, I found out that it was true, that the way that people were treated, the way that people were being paid, the way that women were treated without dignity and incarcerated, it was also shocking to me. So I understand that absolutely, completely. And unfortunately, it was my real life.
Yeah. And again, I can't even imagine. I know what you try to be or feel like, right, and putting yourself in someone else's shoes, but you can't when we know we've never experienced that. We take for granted all of the privileges that we have of not experiencing something like that. So I can't even imagine of all the harms that are done to women who are unfortunately impacted by incarceration. So what are some others' thoughts about this?
One thing I was going to say is, in addition to having to pay sometimes for reproductive related procedures or transportation to those procedures, women, even in California, up until the passage of AB 732, did not have regular access to menstrual products. And I mean, as individuals who, no matter where you are, if you've experienced menstruation, you understand, what that could feel like, and to have to go through that. And when you're in a situation when you don't have freedom over your own body and you don't even have access to what you need during your menstrual cycle, I mean, what an indignity. And I think that is felt threefold by women or individuals who identify as women who are incarcerated, because the last I checked, 92% are survivors of domestic abuse, of sexual abuse. So these are the most vulnerable people in our society who are in the situation, stripped of their freedom, and then really put in a position where they just have to exist at almost a subhuman level.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. I'm wondering, What does, in addition to the things we spoke about, what other things kind of signify reproductive oppression for those who are impacted by incarceration? What does that look like? What did it look like prior to Roe v. Wade?
I think prior to Roe v. Wade, oppression to me, I'm also informally incarcerated. I spent 14 years in prison. I think those reproductive oppressions looked like, I think the first thing that I noticed is when I had to strip search in front of, I think it was like 120 women and 10 female staff officers, and having to take out your tampon in front of everybody and sit there, while blood is dripping down your legs. And I don't want to sound graphic, but that was our reality, and those were things that we didn't want to live with. So I know a lot of us decided to get on birth control, and it was because I didn't want to have a period. I didn't want to go back and forth to court and have to experience that degradation, so a lot of people opted for both birth control options so that you didn't have to worry about, going to court and having to expose your menstruation cycle to everyone. So I think that was very oppressive, and people I know are still having issues down the line with deciding to take birth control, and they're still having problems right now being able to have children because they were taking the birth control unnecessarily. I think it also looked like forced sterilizations. We know that goes on in the prisons all the time. Women not having the right to decide, hey, maybe I need to seek a second opinion. Maybe this doctor telling me that these cysts or these fibroids, the only way that they can be removed is by taking out my entire uterus. I think having the right to a second opinion or even a third opinion when it comes to making such drastic decisions are issues that were relevant and present in prison way before the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And I think the last thing is that motherhood is completely undermined. When we spoke on that, you don't have the right to parent your children and instill in them the values and your core beliefs. They're being raised by the system or, and values that are not your own are being put and placed into them. But I think those are the most oppressive things that I could think about that I personally experienced prior to Roe versus Wade overturning. And I think the last thing is sexual assaults. That happens in prison also, women just not being able to say, no, I don't want to do this for fear of, losing your date or not being able to go on visits with your children, subjecting yourself to sexual assaults and not speaking up, because you fear the consequences of speaking up and using your voice. So those are things that are relevant and that are still going on today, aside of the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
One other thing that many of my colleagues challenged was shackling. And I think that
Right.
Dr. Khan talked about that as well too, shackling of pregnant people during the pendency of their pregnancy and during the birthing process. So these are people who are giving birth and they're being shackled at the exact same time. So what that does to the individual who's going through that, what that could do to a baby who's being born in such a constrained way. So that's another thing just to lift up as well.
Yeah, when I was thinking about that, we often talk about when we teach about trauma, about epigenetics and the transgenerational passing of trauma right through generations. And if you have a mother who's being restrained, shackled, right? Shackled. I'm thinking about over 400 years going back to slavery, right? You have women of color being shackled, giving birth in prison. That's insane to me. That this also was a practice. I was quite shocked that was still going on. Right, even here in California, that is unbelievable to me. And that you think that we've progressed so far, but yet we haven't progressed at all. So given all of these things, all of the layers and layers of harm that are done by such an oppressive system, what are some ways that maybe you guys have experienced or maybe you're aware of from the voices that you have spoken to? How do we start to heal or protect ourselves from these harms when we're impacted?
Well, I mean, the system is not set up really to deal with women's trauma or anyone's trauma, really. Uh, a lot of what like Kiera and what, Summer were talking about, as they were talking, I was thinking like, gosh, like because now I've been in the free world for so long, I can see clearly about people's traumas aren't being dealt with in a way that's healing. And not just, it's also the fear of is a really big thing in prison. It may happen, it may not happen, but there's this overwhelming like fear that it could happen because of our trauma that we've been through, and because we saw so much unfairness and so much injustice, that you begin to walk like that. It begins to kind of like overshadow like every part of you, and that leads to something else, which is when we re-enter, that we suffer from post-incarceration syndrome because of just walking with all that trauma. And being a free world person now, I look at it and I think like, God, it could have been dealt with so differently. Like when you go into prison, like no matter what your crime is, no matter what, that you sit down with the therapist or you sit down with the social worker and you start working through that, so that when you do have to go to the doctor or you do have to go to something, it's so overwhelming because they have this power over you that if you've only been in the free world, I'm not sure how to describe it to you, but it's such an overwhelming fear. I was pregnant in the county jail, and that for me it was such a fear for me that I was I going to be shackled? Like I'm 22 years old. I've never been pregnant before. I'm in this horrible situation where I'm so filled with shame. The whole world is looking at me. I'm the worst. I mean, to me, I was like, I'm the worst person in the world. Like I thought about that a lot. And so how do you then walk in an incarceration, and how do you heal from that? And the answer for me was other women, was my community. The answer for me is always my community. And that's what happened with me, is that I had my elders, women who believed in me when I thought I'm pretty much the worst person in the world though. And they said, you're actually not. And let's work on it. And so that was my sisters are really what healed me. So that's what it was for me.
That is beautiful. And I think community is healing. I think healing happens in relationships. We often talk about that. And I'm wondering, just how do we maintain or create a community for those who are still inside? And what are some other ways that we feel that we can heal or heal women that are still experiencing this today?
I think it's important to as someone who has walked with individuals while they were incarcerated, to be in a position where you recognize the trauma that the individual is going through. Because a lot of times, like, the focus is on, well, at least you kind of got this. This makes it a little bit better. Oh, well, this change is going to help. Yeah, things can help, but the trauma is going to be there no matter what. So understanding that someone that you are supporting, a loved one, I'm speaking for people who are not incarcerated, that they are going through that, and that you see them and that you recognize it, and that you are there with them, even though you might not understand it completely, that you are trying to walk with them through that experience. So really kind of extending that and acknowledging that no matter what, they are incarcerated, they're in a cell, and it's not going to be a good situation, and just kind of being real about it and saying, and what can we do to help you while you're through it, and what can be done before and after? Because like I said, 92% of the people, the last I checked, who are women who are incarcerated are survivors. And so what could have been done after they experienced the trauma beforehand, and what can be done for them afterwards when they have trauma on top of the trauma of being incarcerated, so that they are not in the system, so that we are not in this perpetual cycle of going in and out of incarceration because of this unmet trauma, these unmet needs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that it's important for us to talk about prevention and how do we start to prepare people. I also believe, as a social worker, particularly as a trauma specialist, you have to meet people where they're at, right? So how do you walk that journey with them and oftentimes they may not be at a place to be ready to make the moves or decisions that we may want them to make because of our own fear for them, right? So oftentimes when we're dealing with survivors of IPV, we try to make them to, we try to help them to make safety kits, escape plans. When you're ready, this is what you can do. Do you have a support system? Do you have a friend? And I think about all these things for people who are on the free side, as you said, Norma, right? But the people that are still living with these harms, and then the whole system, when we look at in the inside, and again, we're talking about people who have been, sexually violated, people who have been raped, people who are in the inside, just feeling that fear, that oppression that happens on the inside as well, their own bodies. As you said, feeling shame, feeling like you're the worst person in the world, because that is the mindset that oppressors want you to feel, that you are the worst person. I don't think systems are set up in a way to make us feel that we have our own rights to our own bodies, to make our own decisions, because you have no rights. You're seen as a number, somebody who it's my decision on what happens to you, on what you decide to do, on what birth control. Kiara, you mentioned earlier about women taking birth control because they don't want to feel that humiliation, that degradation, right? But imagine some of those things can cause blood clots, they can cause other health problems, right? No one's thinking about that or even caring, because they only think about, well, you have two choices, you either do it or you don't. How harmful is that on a person who's already suffering so many different harms, so much fear of walking even out of their cell? What does that feel like? How do we help, again, shift the mindset of empowerment? Kiara.
So I can speak from personal experience. One of my favorite quotes is by Frederick Douglass. It says, "Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave." And oppression to me is a form of slavery. And I think that building awareness and being knowledgeable of the systems of the oppressor is very, very important in fighting this fight. I know, like when I was incarcerated and years and years of just being told what to do, and taking it and not being okay with those decisions, I started to read. I started to learn their systems. I started to learn the protocol, learn what they couldn't do, learn what they could do. And I started to use that system to make sure that my rights were no longer being violated. And I think it's very, very empowering. The Bible says that, "Hate not the oppressor, but learn none of his ways." You have to learn their talk. And I think if we empower ourselves out here as a community and we become knowledgeable of their system, we'll be better able to equip the women on the inside and help them fight that system. Maybe creating a pipeline to where they can reach out to us and ask us, "Hey, what are my options in this situation?" And because we are knowledgeable of those systems, we can say, "Hey, you don't have to do that. These are your rights. This is what you can do." No, you go back into that doctor's office and you tell them, per Title 15, you have to give me A, B, C, and D. And I think if we equip women, or if women start to equip themselves with a knowledge of the system of the oppressor, I think they would no longer walk down the aisles with their heads held down. They would walk in power, saying, "No, I know what you can do to me. I know what you can't do to me." And I think giving them that power and maybe sending pamphlets in and sending material in to where they would know, what they can and cannot be done to them, I think that would help tremendously. And it would be able to break some of those chains, because they will no longer be dependent on the system. They will know for themselves what can and cannot happen to them. So I think knowledge is like the biggest thing that we have to help them inside.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I can see you guys are just anxious to reply to that. So I'm going to be quiet and let you guys take the floor, because I do believe knowledge is power. Summer and Norma, do you guys want to add to that?
I can jump in really fast. There's not too much to add to that. And I mean, just starting off with that quote, and it reminded me of, what Audre Lorde said as well. Like, you can't break down the master's house with the master's tools. So thinking about other things in our arsenal in order to really challenge the system, and going back to what Norma said about community and building up community as a real safe space. And if you're thinking about oppression and the ways in which marginalized people have been able to rise ourselves up from oppression, it's through community, it's through strategizing, it's through organizing, and almost like a quote unquote counterculture way against the oppressor. So really figuring out what can we do within ourselves, if it's feeding that material, that knowledge, giving it to our community members who are incarcerated, if it's building up bigger systems of support that can actually provide some of the services that are needed in order to attack the trauma, attack the things that are allowing for people to cycle in and out of the system. I think that's something that we need to be kind of focused on in order to live and walk the path that Kiara just described.
That kind of leads us into our another question in our discussion. It says facilities with written policies had barriers, including distance from abortion care, providers, delays in treatment until abortion was no longer legal, requirements for the pregnant person. Again, we talked about this earlier, to pay for the cost of the abortion. And again, we talked about the transportation as well. What are some better ways that policies can be implemented into the prison or jail system? So we know that knowledge is power, and we can inform and try to let them know what their rights are. But how do we actually change policies, and what policies need to be changed so we can have better care for women and their reproductive rights?
I mean, I think there's a couple things, but I think one thing that comes to mind is that, you know, we at ARC, where Kiara is now also, we work to change policy and we work to change laws in the state of California. We're successful a lot of the times, but we're not successful all of the time. And I think that part of that is that we need to start seeing people inside prisons as our community, that they're an extension of our community, that our community is larger than what it is in front of us, but that it is also people behind the walls. It's easy to be punitive and to sit out here. And I know right here, and probably our viewers too, I'm speaking to the choir, but it's a punitive system. And I think that once we start looking at people incarcerated as part of our community, and just like Summer was saying, that 92% of women have suffered some sort of abuse. I mean, I feel like it's, and I say this all the time, I feel like it's closer to 99%. And then the 1% that says that they haven't, actually name it something else. So that's how much it is in prison, in my experience. So when you think about it like that, and you think about, you know, some of the media wants to portray people in prison as like this villain, like this monster. And, you know, when I first got to prison too, I watched those movies too, you know? And so I got there and I was like, you know, when are they going to turn into this person? Like, this is, you know, these are terrible people, right? And what I really found out is that everybody there, everything could be traced back. It can, if you really sat down and talked to everybody and so, you know, you'd have like your group of people, and I worked at the mental health department. And so I had access to a lot of people talking about a lot of deep things. And that's something that I found, was that everybody could be traced back to, and exactly like what happened, like being abused at home and feeling, you know, these emotions at home, or being neglected at home, abuse, incest, whatever the case may be. And then, you know, finding that person to love you, and that person that you put your everything into, that loved you. And then, you know, you're an addict, or, you know, he wants to do this and you don't want to tell on him because this is the first time you felt love, and you are going to get that life sentence right along with him. And so I think that those things are really important when we have these conversations, that we need to look at people incarcerated as something other than the villain or the scapegoat, or, you know, the person that we can all focus on as the enemy.
I want to piggyback on what Norma said, because I think it's very important. I think we can't get policies in prison because just like she said, the world views women in prison or men in prison as prisoners, as outcasts. And so when you go up to try to change legislation, they're not for it. They don't want to improve the lives of criminals, the lives of castaways. But if we stop looking at men and women who are incarcerated as castaways and as human beings, maybe society will say, hey, well, they're deserving of the same rights and the same human healthcare systems that we have out here. I think that's the way to change things. And I think Norma made a very, very staple comment when she said that we have to start seeing men and women in prison as men and women, and not inmates, and not as incarcerated people. And when the legislators start to see that these are human beings, maybe we can get the legislation that we at ARC are trying to get passed. Maybe they can cross those thresholds and actually be implemented inside the prisons.
And one thing that I would just add to all of that as well is, after we've seen or we've accomplished legislative strides, I mentioned AB 732, making sure that we're still centering the experience of those who are incarcerated to let us know, hey, is this being effectuated? Is this actually trickling down? Because, us on the outside can be like, oh, great, now there's going to be more reproductive care, more menstrual care, less shackling. But what's happening on the inside? And it kind of goes back to this dehumanization of the experience where you aren't even connecting with the individual who's supposed to be most intimately affected by this change, because you don't see them. You say, hey, I've done something for you, that's good enough. But making sure that, hey, we are not dehumanizing anyone throughout any part of this process. And after the victory, that's when the focus is even more intent on what is the experience? Is this happening? Is this being effectuated? Is your life being changed? Because, hey, the trauma is going to be there, but we fought for this. We want to make sure that you're experiencing some sort of reprieve.
Absolutely. I'm thinking, where are the teeth of accountability? Like, who holds those teeth when laws are passed, when policies are changed, if it's not trickling down to the actual people that are being impacted by incarceration, right? It's like, where does that live? So what are some of the specific things that you guys are doing in your organizations when it comes to injustice about these intersections that we're discussing today?
Well, we have a bill. Well, we had a bill, but we're revamping it right now. But it was AB 2717. And what it would have done would have given people in prison or women in prison who have children or who are pregnant, parenting classes, a child-centered visiting day, an ability to have transportation to bring. So what we were trying to do was we were trying to break that intergenerational trauma. And what happens in the system is, as somebody spoke to it earlier, is that if you get sentenced to a certain amount of time, and I want to say it's about 14 months, but don't quote me on that, then you lose custody of your children. It doesn't matter if you were a good mom. It doesn't matter what happened, the situation that you went into prison for. If you're going to be gone for that long of time, you will get your parental rights taken away unless you have somebody to pick up the child. So what I saw personally with my son is that there weren't a lot of people bringing their kids to see their moms in prison. For what, I mean, we could talk all the rest of this panel about that, like, how we're viewed, our gender being in prison, it's more of like a man thing. How do women who commit violent crimes, like how we're viewed in society and in certain families and in cultures and all of that. And so our visiting rooms look very different than the visiting rooms in the men's visit. So what we were trying to do was make something a little bit more child-centered for moms and also some counseling, some therapy, some talking about that, and also for people with longer sentences. There are opportunities available, but they're for people with shorter sentences, like 8 months or something like that. And so in order to keep the families together, we really need some sort of policy in place. And so we were vetoed by the governor last week with that bill. And so we're going back to the drawing table about how to really support moms in prison. And so we'll be back.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've been in child welfare for over 20 years, and I can tell you, I can concur with all of that. I've taken many kids to go visit their parents, both moms and dads. for those who are incarcerated. And I can tell you that you really need to have a lot of preparation, I think, on both sides, because there's a lot of emotion and a lot of trauma that occurs just from that separation of the visit, a lot of expectations, a lot of buildup. But I think, again, that's not addressed in an intentional way. So I love what you said about creating child-centered family visitation sites, because I don't think they realize the level of trauma that's placed on the children, right? We talked about 1.3 million children whose moms are in jail or are incarcerated, prison or something, right? So think about all of those little ones who are just feeling without their mom, and they need their mom, regardless, even if it's a long sentence. That relationship, that bond, as you said earlier, Kiara, someone else is giving them their values, not your values, and it's automatically assumed that your values don't have value because of your incarceration. Those are two different things. You can still nurture, still parent, still make the decisions for your child. And you're right, Norma, that's true. If you're going to be incarcerated for more than 12 months, because that's the statute that they give, 12 months for permanency. So if the mom is not going to be, or the parent is going to be incarcerated, they have a right to make a plan. But again, if we're talking about trauma and harm in their own support system before they went in, where's the appropriate person, caregiver for their child, right? So again, we're talking about reproductive rights in that manner, because they don't realize you're stripping away those rights and how that adds another layer of trauma onto everything else that you're already experiencing. So that's amazing. I really hope that you guys revamp the bill and send it to us. We'd be more than happy to support it over here at Trauma Informed LA.
That's amazing. What we're really looking at is there is a program, it's called the Mother Infant Program. But when we looked at it, last year when we looked at it, there were 2 women who were placed there. And then currently there was 1. And so no one qualifies for these programs because the culture has really changed, where people with the low level convictions are more at the county jail side, or they're being released a little bit differently because of COVID and all of that. And so the rest of the world needs to catch up, that people with longer sentence should not be demonized and not be separated from their children.
I agree with you. We have LA County has an incarcerated parents program for people that are at the women's central jail over in Linwood. And so we set up visits. We have a person on site that helps to set up visits for the moms so that they can be done, in a more holistic, trauma informed way. But again, I feel programs like that need to be expanded into prisons, not just into county jails that we're here for. I think that, we have a responsibility to ensure that connection and bonding continues regardless of where the mom is placed. I think that's very important. Summer, what about you? What are you doing to address some of these intersections?
Sure. Kind of going back to accountability, one of the things that my colleagues and I are working on at the ACLU of Southern California is working to hold the sheriff accountable. And I'm speaking specifically the sheriff of LA County and across California, but especially, in LA, it's the sheriff that runs the jail. So it's the sheriff that runs our jail carceral system, which is the biggest one in the country, so effectively the world. And so making sure that there is a mechanism of oversight. There's going to be a measure on the ballot in November in LA County, that's Measure A, that folks can vote on to support, because the sheriff, who is really supposed to be responsible to ensuring that there are reproductive rights and protections and privileges afforded to people who are in the carceral system, and that they're getting kind of what they need and what is mandated by the law and by the legislature. And so that's one thing. Another thing that we're working on is we're working in coalition with others for the Reimagined Child Safety, or Reimagined Child Safety Coalition, which does a lot of work in protecting parental rights and really looking at the ways in which there is selective enforcement and criminalization of parents, specifically Black and Brown parents.
That's right.
Parental decisions. So that is something that I think we're seeing more kind of media attention on, but there needs to be even more done, because it's really easy, I think, for someone to kind of accept, kind of going back to our discussion about the demonization of people who are incarcerated, it's really easy to demonize people who are supposedly bad parents, and the ways in which, you know, Black and brown folks are seen as bad parents and their parental rights are stripped away, you know, so much more easily than other folks. And so really working with the community to push for change in that area as well.
Yeah, we talk about, I mean, I'm implementing Family First, or co-leading the implementation of Family First here in LA. So one of the groups we talked to was the Reimagine Coalition. And I think about, what does it really mean to engage community? Like, we always have this conversation over and over again. We want community-led initiatives to really be able to make changes, particularly in these areas. But what does that look like, right? We have, organizations like ARC out there, credible messengers, people with lived experience, really being able to pave the way to make changes. Summer, like yourself, you know, since the beginning, you are been being diligent about, you know, making changes and following through with legislative change, as well as accountability for some of our elected officials that are out there supposedly being able to give those privileges and things to the people that are being impacted. So it's really interesting that we're here at a place, we're coming up toward the election, right? What changes do we expect to see with the decision of Roe versus Wade being overturned? And we're talking about reproductive rights, or the intersection of those vulnerable communities that are being impacted by this. Do we expect to see any changes coming up?
You mean like in terms of like on the ballot?
Yeah, on the ballot.
Well, one thing that we have is Prop 1. So Prop 1 is a way to actually enshrine the right to abortion within the California Constitution. It's already a law in California, thankfully, but this would further really cement it as a fundamental right in our state. So that's one thing that people can be thinking about and looking for on their ballot. So that's Prop 1.
Are there any other ways or anything that you think that potential legislators or current legislators should be lifting up or really addressing some of the things I know we talked about, or some of the bills that you guys mentioned, you know, AB 2717 and AB 732? Are there other things, not necessarily bills per se, or just movements that really need to be, you know, uplifted or light shed on them to kind of hold those accountability pieces for those who have the power to do so?
I mean, when you say that, you know, my mind took me to that first Women's March that we had, when I don't even remember what year it was. I just remember it was before COVID, and we couldn't get a cell phone signal because there were so many people packed and just like filling up the streets right there. We were at Pershing Square, and we were like, oh my God, my phone doesn't work. Oh my God. Like, it was, you know, so free world now. Oh my God, you know, my phone doesn't work. So, but I think about things like that we need to really show, as women, show our force out there, either marching in the streets or voting for people with our values and only. Like, and I mean, I feel like that it is in California. You know, when I travel to other states, I know that it's different there, and I'm really super grateful, and I'm grateful, you know, that we're in this state. But I think that we have to continue to vote for people with our values, and continue to not let you know, certain people sway us and be like a kind of like in a cloak of pretending that they're our allies when they're actually not. And read up, to Kiara's point, like, educate yourself, like, read up about things, and you know, go out there and march and make your voice known, and be known to your assembly person, be known to your senator. Go visit him in Sacramento, visit him at his office. And I think that by that they will know that we're not silent, and that these things mean a lot to us. So I think all of those things are really important today.
You're right. When I think about what we can do to kind of harness and get people organizing in communities, I'm thinking, what other action steps can communities take away from today? What is something that people can walk away and say, yes, I can do this? We talked about creating better communication streams between those on the inside and the outside. What does it take to actually do something like that, right? We know we have organizations like ARC, but for our community that may be watching this or may watch this once we post it in the future, what does it look like to really create community organizing around these issues? What does that look like for them, for the average person?
I think for the average person, it's really simple. It could be, you get a hold of a legislative bill and you know how to break it down in simple terms, and you send in that inside to the get in organizations and bring it into organizations like us, where we have access to send information inside so that the women are aware of it. It could be simple steps as getting involved in our organizations. I think about all of the parents, all of the sisters, all of the brothers, all of the children, the grandparents of people who are formerly incarcerated. If we came together and lobbied like corporations lobby for bills, think about all the change that we could make. So I think just getting involved, not all the time you have to do something separate, jumping on the bandwagon with people and with organizations that are already familiar with their work and helping them and carrying that load, I think would go a long way. We look for volunteers all the time, we have events where we have to go to like Sacramento, where we go down to City Hall and we stand out there and we picket with our signs. Even as big as our organization is, we still get down and do that brunt, dirty, boots on the ground type of work. So getting involved in these movements, I think is a takeaway that community members and the average people can take away. And then using your voice. We had a seminar last night about the power of the ballot. It's very important. If you have beliefs and you want people to champion your beliefs, we have to put people in office, like Norma said, that they align with our beliefs, So I think those are two things. Get involved, use your voice, educate yourself also. And then you can educate other people. Start knowing who you're voting for, why you're voting for them, and stop doing it because my mom said so, or this is what my dad does, and my sister votes this way. Being very, very, very selfish with your vote and making sure that you're voting for people that are going to better your future, your kids' futures. And I think taking away the fact that there's power in numbers. And that's really, really important. There's power in numbers and just getting involved. I think those are things and actions that community members that they can start doing today that would create change.
Kiara, I hear and feel your passion. That is amazing. I want to volunteer today and I have no time, but you say give a busy person something to do and they'll find the time to do it. I'm like, yes, I'm out here. I'm ready. I'm ready to jump on board.
Funny you should mention that because we are doing a Christmas drive for the women inside, and our goal is that every woman incarcerated in the state system receives a Christmas card from somebody. So we have a few different churches and organizations working on that. And then we also are able to give each woman a plastic bag. Everything has to be clear, see-through. So a plastic bag filled with candy, little trial size coffee or tea, and stationery. Those are the things that come to my mind right now. Oh, and hair ties, but not these, like little cloth ones. But we have a drive. If you go to our website or our Instagram, you can see how to donate right now to the women inside so that they can get really big, robust bags of stuff. And I can tell you, and so can Kiara, how exciting it is to get a bag. I know it doesn't seem like a lot to us because we're out here, but even just the plastic bag, you can reuse that, you can wash it, you can clean it, and then we put stickers on it. You can take those stickers off. You can send that to your son or your daughter or your nephews and nieces, and it's you can draw around them. And then for the hair ties, like you can have your hair tie last till the next one. So if you're really careful. So there's a lot of things, and then giving you stationery like that, it's just really, that's all that you have in there to really give to your family. And so it's really cool to get if you can kind of trade with everybody, and you get a congratulations, you're married. You're like, what? You have a congratulations, you're married card? Like, I haven't seen one of those in 10 years. Like, I'll trade you for 2
Wow.
birthdays or whatever. So yeah, so it sounds like it's not a big deal. It's a huge deal. And coffee, and it has to be the taste, not taster's choice, but I prefer taster's choice. And you dump them in the hot water. What is that called? Instant. The instant coffee. So little instant coffees or little instant teas, we take those too. So we're trying to give each woman a bag filled with those little things for Christmas.
Norma, that is truly amazing. We'll have to talk. I know Susie's watching. So Susie, we have a winter project, because we'll definitely want to follow up with that, put it on our website, and do everything we can to get items donated for this important project. I love it. I just absolutely love it. I think it's amazing. Summer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Norma, please send that information my way. I'm ready, and I want to send it to all my family and friends and loved ones as well. And I mean, there's not much I can add to this. The only other thing I was going to say is really kind of recognizing this fight over reproductive rights as a national issue. You know, we've said a lot of times, oh, thankfully we're in California, but hey, it doesn't matter. This is something that affects all of us, even if we feel like we are a little insulated being in California just because of the laws that we have. Just because our laws are not on the precipice of being changed right now, it doesn't mean that this fight is not going to be on our doorsteps. And thinking about the ways in which we have these fights and how they play out in racialized ways. I don't think that it's a coincidence that Dobbs, the case that overturned Roe v. Wade, came from Mississippi, the state with the highest Black population, and the ways in which things are being done to control our bodies of Black and brown people, bodies of people who identify as women, and really seeing the fact that we are all in this together, and understanding that when there is this attack, it does affect us. It affects the way that people see women, and it affects the way that they are treated within our facilities in this state, because it changes just the national understanding of our rights as women.
Wow. Well, as we're wrapping up the beginning part of our program today, or this discussion, it has been so amazing, but I'm going to ask each of our panelists today to respond to 2-part question. One, what is something that you're going to take away from this conversation that we've had today? And then 2, what is something that you want our followers to take away from the conversation today? So for yourself and for the people that are going to be watching this, what are the 2 things that you feel you want to uplift? Like, if you guys are going to go, make sure this is what I'm taking, this is what I want you to take.
I think for me, I'm going to take away the community. I think because while I was incarcerated, community was all I had. The camaraderie that you get with women in prison, like it's unbreakable, because we're all in a system that's trying to keep us down. And I think that we rose above that, and we stuck together in that community. And that's one thing I carry with me even out here. You know, I'm like, community. But taking those skills and transitioning them to the free world and attempting to build that community here, so that I can change what's going on in there, is something that I'm really going to take away from this. And I think it's important, because I've never met Summer Lacey or most of the people who are on this panel. And I didn't think it was that many people out there pushing for the same things that ARC was pushing for, you know? I just think it's only us. We're the only incarcerated people who are fighting this fight, you know, but we're not. You know, there's plenty of people out there who are championing this cause. So I'm going to take community and connect them with that community to build a stronger community. And I would ask again that people who are watching this, that we start to care for one another, that we start to look out for one another. If the politicians aren't going to look out for us, we need to build community and start looking out for ourselves. And I think that's very, very important. We can make change, and again, take that there's power in numbers. So I would ask you guys to get involved, join some of these groups, and let's see what the power of numbers and what motivation can do to change the world, because we can do it. That's what I would ask that people take away from this.
Yeah, some snaps for Kiera. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Who wants to go next? Who wants to follow that?
I know. I don't, but if I just sit here, Kira will know I'm afraid to go after her. And then so
I learned from her, so.
So what I think that that I am taking away is similar to what Kira said, is that it's really amazing that you have all formed this organization that deals with trauma, and that you're so welcoming to formerly incarcerated folks and incarcerated folks. And that just feels, that kind of proves the point. Like, we go back inside, we bring programs to the women inside, and we also bring, stories about community and stories about how you're not going to be alone when you come out here. And so this will be one more story to tell the women that you all are out here, and that your whole organization is focused on trauma and how to deal with that out here. And so that's amazing, and that's incredibly healing for us to know. And then I think what I would want people to take away is to think about how much we've talked about community here, and how much it means, and how healing it is, and how can you make your community bigger, not smaller, bigger.
Yes, yes. You can never have too many people in your tribe, as long as they're the right people. Again, as you said, Kiera, people that share your values, people who are, that you can see yourself in, right? I love that. Summer.
This is hard because I feel like the other panelists have said what I'm taking away as well. But really, I guess I'm just going to be fueled by the passion in this space. And I'm just so grateful for you all to be able to be here and to be motivated by your passion. And I know every panelist and everyone who helped put this together, knows what it is to be in this fight and to, work alongside people, and how difficult it can be. And so just to be able to be in this space and to have the community as everyone talked about, and then to be able to use it to continue to fuel ourselves, because we have to be able to fuel ourselves if we are going to be able to help others. So that's what I'm going to take with me. And what I hope that other people watching will take from this is that there is life on the other side of incarceration. We've talked about the dehumanization, but understanding intimately that people who are incarcerated, they are us, they are me, they are you, they are our mothers, they are our fathers, they are everything, and they are coming home. And what happens to them there affects all of us. And just understanding that we are all in it, we are all behind the bars, and we are all, free, because we are in this together. So knowing that we are people in this walk together, supporting each other.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're not quite done yet. We do have a couple of questions in the chat online. So one of the questions they had is, do any of you have any book recommendations? We have a resource room, which I know that we shared, and we can share again in the chat for our viewers. But do you guys have any book recommendations for people to be more knowledgeable about reproductive justice and those impacted by incarceration, obviously?
So I would recommend The New Jim Crow. I think that's a book that really, really helped me look at the purpose of incarceration and why people are incarcerated in these huge numbers. I think that book was like one of the turning points in my life. I mean, it touches on everything from reproductive justice to social, economical impoverishment, to illegal sentencing, to aggravated sentencing. I think it's a treasure trove. So I would recommend The New Jim Crow.
Thank you, Kiera. Any other book recommendations?
I'm reading a book about trauma but I can't remember the name of it. It's something about your body and trauma and how it affects. So I don't know.
Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Is that it?
Maybe. Is it blue?
I don't know.
It's like, I'm like, it's right. It's over there, but I don't want to get up. But I read it when I
scavenger hunt time, you guys. It's scavenger hunt time.
Yeah. I'll be like, so yeah, when I travel, I've been reading that. And I think that if you talk about trauma and you see how it affects folks, then you'll understand a lot more about incarceration and about what happens to folks when they become incarcerated. So that's what I would say. If that's probably the book. We'll go with that one if you recommend it also.
Yeah, it's a really good book when it talks about trauma. There's so many different books. There's My Grandmother's Hands, when you're talking about by Resma Menakem. There's a book that I looked up yesterday that I haven't read, but it's called Policing the Womb: Invisible Women and the Criminalization of Motherhood. It sounds very interesting, and I was going to actually order it. But it talks about, some of these intersections and about the secret surveillance of women over their bodies. And I'm sure that if we, read into it, it probably has a lot of information just in regards to the intersection of intimate partner violence and the sexualization, the sexual power dynamics over those who are victimizing women. So that's just one recommendation that I would have. But I'm always, I have I'm looking up because my bookcase is right above my head. So I think about, I have 20,000 books on trauma. So there's always books on our reading room. We have a reading room on our website for a bunch of recommendations that Trauma Informed LA has. And again, we have a resource room that we'll share with you guys at the end of this presentation. So any final thoughts before we start to wrap up today? Any final thoughts from this amazing conversation? I just, I know I'm going to say it again later, but I cannot thank each of you enough for joining us today and engaging in this critical discussion. It was amazing. Okay, then Lydia, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay. There it is. Well, thank you so much for that great conversation. It was really powerful. Now, do we have any questions other than the ones Dr. Ramona just asked? I don't believe we do. Okay. Now we have some closing activity. We're going to have amazing Afia
Well,
share.
I'm sorry, Lydia. I'm going to interrupt you one more time because Michaela gave us one last question before we get
okay,
to
go ahead.
Afia. So I'm so sorry, Afia. I just want to make sure we get these questions answered. It said, again, any of you can answer. Are there any inspirations or motivational figures who influence all of you dramatically, it says?
I would go. It's crazy because I was asked this question too. And sometimes I think people want us to say like Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, and all the big names, and I think those are people that we aspire to be. But I think when we look around, for me, my mother was the biggest inspiration that I had. And I think we overskip like our family members, people who have a direct impact on us, because we're looking for the bigger name. But I aspire to be like Harriet Tubman. I aspire to be like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But I think my mother giving me that foundation and instilling all her morals, all her values within me, even though for a minute, like I went my own way and decided not to follow them for a minute. But I remember she would tell me, train up a child in the way he should go. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. So she took that time to really instill morals, values, right, wrong. You can do anything that you want to. Don't be like me, be better than me. And even though I had my hookup or I went to prison, I kept those sayings with me in prison. And I did the best that I could in prison, fought to get out. And even now, it's her voice that tells me you can do this, you can be better. I think that carries me a long way. And I think my mother has been my biggest inspiration, and her giving me the tools that I need to succeed makes me look up to like Harriet Tubman and those people and say, that's what I want to be like. But she's the foundation to give me the hope to dream to be like those people. So I think it's my mother for me.
That is beautiful, Kira.
It is beautiful. I couldn't have said it any better. And when you said the question, Dr. Roshan, I was like, I'm not sure, because for me too, it starts at home. And my parents have always been, my guiding lights, my touchstones. And they're the people who really just supported me in a vision to work for social justice, especially within the criminal legal system. And when I started, it was before we were really having these broader conversations about it being kind of the civil rights struggle and kind of fight of our time. And what we talked about before is it being demonized, people who have made mistakes. So understanding that even, as people of color, we look at it like that. And so them being kind of open and understanding that this is the fight for us and the ways in which we can advance our rights. But the only other thing I was thinking is so many of the clients that I worked with before too, just learning from them and just the hope and optimism of people who are in abysmal conditions, but still holding on to their own humanity, still holding on to the fact that there's going to be something different and better for them and their families. I mean, that you just can't replace that. And if you're ever feeling like I can't go on, just understanding, hey, we all can, and we can all make a change no matter where we are.
Oh, absolutely. I lay myself at the feet of those with lived experience because I can never walk in the shoes that you have walked. So I thank you for allowing me to stand in your presence. So I believe that wholeheartedly. So thank you so much. All right. So again, the last question is, and I guess, we've kind of already talked about this a little bit. It says, I'd like to learn more about how to amplify the voices of currently incarcerated people, given all that is done to silence them. So I think you guys have spoke about that. Norma, definitely getting involved. Summer also, be out there, be boots on the ground, get involved in any way that you can. There's different campaigns that you guys can join, letters you can join, donating to the project that we spoke about earlier. But if there's anything else you guys would like to add to what they could do to help to give voice to those who are incarcerated that are impacted by these intersections. That'll be our last question for tonight before we close up.
Vote. I think that's very important. Is because the people who are placed in office, those are the people who have the real power to make the change. We have the power to lobby them for change, but we have to have people in office that agree with social justice reform, that agree that we need to do something about mass incarceration, and that agree to want to sit down at the table and have this conversation. So I think going out, using your power to vote and getting other people to vote, that helps us out a lot. Because if you're putting people in office that want to listen to us, we can bring these bills and we won't be getting vetoed, and they'll say, yeah, I agree with that. Let it go through. I think that's really how you bring a voice to those who are incarcerated, because they don't have that right to vote. We do. So we have to put people in office that want to hear about this type of stuff.
One other thing I would say too is participate in the jury process. It makes such a difference. And so many of us are not there in those jury pools, in those jury boxes. We need everyone. We need our experiences. We need those perspectives making some of these decisions.
So you guys, you heard that, vote and participate in the jury process. And with that, I will turn it over to our lovely intern, Lydia, who will go take us into our amazing ending activity.
Thank you. Again, thank you everyone so much for this wonderful and powerful conversation. And as we close out today, we would like to take a moment of centering and grounding. We understand that for some, this could be a heavy topic. So we would like to lead us. I would like to have Afia lead us in the practice that will help us get there. Afia, thank you so much for being here right now with us. She will be sharing and performing a song and shows her wonderful artistic talent.
And thank you so much for having me today. I want to thank the panelists for their very inspirational contributions. And I don't like the word resilience, because especially as women of color, that's used to describe us so often, but I do see a lot of resilient women here. And what I wish for us all mostly now is a period of grace and a period of softness and a period of ease. I'm gonna sing two songs. The first one is called Free Falling. It's from my album, Healing in Her Eyes. And free falling is about living from the freedom that you have in essence. So that's what I'm going to start with. Oh, ooh, I don't take your boxes, cause I'd be lying to myself. I don't take your boxes, cause I'd be lying to myself. I don't take your boxes, I put myself up on the shelf instead. I put myself up on the shelf, yeah. I put myself up on the shelf, yeah, yeah. I put myself up on that shelf, yeah. I put myself up on that shelf instead. I put myself up on that shelf. Don't you know that this is your time? Stop walking in line, cause you run that show. So roll up those blinds and go with the road. Don't stay on the side and stop doubting. Stop doubting yourself, yeah. Just put yourself up on that shelf. Stop doubting. Stop doubting yourself. Yeah. Just put yourself up on that shelf. Yeah, yeah. Just put yourself up on that shelf. Yeah. Just put yourself up on that shelf instead. Just put yourself up on that shelf. I don't take your boxes, cause I don't ever feel the need. I don't take your boxes, cause I am not for you to be. I don't take your boxes, cause in my essence I am free instead. Yeah, in my essence I am free, yeah. Yeah, in my essence I am free, yeah, yeah. Yes, in my essence I am free, yeah, yeah. In my essence I am free instead. Yeah, in my essence I am free falling, free falling, free falling, free falling, free falling, yeah, free falling. And this second song, it is called Catching the Vibe. And it's about purpose, actually. It's about purpose and showing up in this world with your purpose. And I hope it could inspire you all to take more steps of that, if that's what you feel called to. Oh yeah, yeah. It's a new era dawning. You staying or you coming, yeah. Will you respond to your calling and let yourself be free? We turn to the fire, burning full of desire. Yanko, let's go higher. Tap into your frequency all day, all night. We are catching the vibe. Be true, be light. You know that is your guide. Say with me, loving is the key. Say with me, I am who I need to be. Catching the vibe, you me align, oh yeah. Energy high, go through the night, open your eyes, oh yeah. Feel that energy, know your mind is free, yeah. Like cold energy, ground yourself, just breathe. Ground yourself, just breathe, yeah. Ground yourself, just breathe. Ground yourself, just breathe, yeah. Ground yourself, just breathe. When you start to awaken to that blissful essence of yours, you start creating and you open all the doors. Be ready to ride those waves, cause I attract, I don't chase. Be on the lookout for what I do.
Don't you know it starts with you? This is the time we going up in the sky. Don't waste your life, your soul urges to thrive. Say with me, I feel past what I see. Say with me, we are the new breed. Catching the vibe, feeling alive, you, me, align, oh yeah. Energy high, go to the night, open your eyes, oh yeah. Feel that energy, know your mind is free, yeah. Like code energy, ground yourself, just breathe. And ground yourself, just breathe. Ground yourself, just breathe. And ground yourself, just breathe. Ground yourself, just breathe. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, I breathe. Catching the vibe, feeling alive, you, me, align, oh yeah. Energy high, go to the night, open your eyes, oh yeah. Feel that energy, know your mind is free, yeah. Like code energy, ground yourself, just breathe. Ground yourself, just breathe. Yeah. Ground yourself, just breathe. Oh, ground yourself, just breathe. Yeah. Ground yourself, just breathe.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was great. That was wonderful.
That was truly amazing, Afia. I have no words. That was just so beautiful, so moving, just simply amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your gift with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So as we're closing out, we have about a minute left. I'm going to leave you guys with 2 quotes, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information. So for our upcoming next table, it's going to be in January, and it's going to focus on the Racial Day of Healing. We still have a specific topic that is still pending, but we also have a couple of our TILA table chats. We have a TILA table chat every other Friday, or bi-weekly, I should say, from 5 to 6. Because of the holiday season, we're slowed down our cadence a little bit. So our next ones will be on November 4th and December 2nd, and they're going to be focused on holiday and mental health. So just focusing on that seasonal affective disorder and how do we ensure that we're caring for ourselves during that time. So that's it for our upcoming events. And I will leave you with 2 quotes, as I said before. The first is by James Baldwin. He said, "I am what time, circumstance, history have made me, certainly, but I am also much more than that. So are we all." So all of the women who are inside, impacted by incarceration and oppressive systems, know that you are everything that you need to be, and everything will come to you, and we stand with you and by you. And from Audre Lorde, who we also have mentioned quite a few times today. So, you know, she's also very inspiring for us. She said, "There is no thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives." So I leave you with that today, to know that everything is an intersection in life. We just have to keep moving and make a difference and empower those to join us in the fight. Thank you all for joining us today.